What if the parts of you that people called too much were actually the parts of you that came here to set you free? What if your stubbornness, your sensitivity, your fire, your restlessness, your refusal to fit neatly inside that stupid little box, what if none of that was a flaw? What if it was Shakti? What if it was your soul speaking through you long before you had the words to understand what it was saying? I've been thinking about this a lot because my dad recently called me a rebel at heart. And something in me really lit up. Not because I had never heard that before. I think some part of me has always known. I was the little girl who was definitely not easily contained. I was feisty and spunky. The youngest in the family, trying to keep up, trying to prove myself, trying to be seen. The girl who played hard, who climbed all the things, fished when fishing seemed like it was just for the guys. I played rugby in college. I moved away from my home state of Nebraska. I opened a yoga studio at 25, sang Sanskrit mantras to gods and goddesses my family didn't even understand. And I chose the path that didn't fit neatly inside the world I came from. For a long time, I thought some of that meant I didn't fully belong. I thought maybe I was too different, too much, too restless, too spiritual, too sensitive, too willing to push the edges. And now, looking back, I see it differently. Maybe I was never too much. Maybe I was being guided. Maybe the sacred rebel was always there. Maybe before I knew the word Shakti, before I knew the word goddess, before I understood sacred feminine power, her life force was already moving through me, in my spunk, in my body, in my courage, in my longing to be seen, in my refusal to be fully contained. So today, I want to talk about what it means to reclaim the sacred rebel within you. Not as a way of rejecting where you came from, but as a way of remembering who you came here to be. I'm Mindy Arbuckle, and this reflection came through after a really meaningful weekend with my family. We were gathered together having one of those tender, important conversations about end-of-life choices, inheritance, how things will be handled, and the kind of practical details that also stir up a lot of emotion. And in the middle of that weekend, my dad shared something from his heart. He told me I was a lot like him, a rebel at heart, someone who likes to push the limits, someone who wants to excel at what I do, someone who likes to help people help themselves. And those words brought something back to me. Sacred rebel. There's something tangible in those words, something real, something ancient. And I realized that this part of me was not something I invented as an adult. She has always been there. This conversation today is for anyone who has ever felt like they were too different for the family, community, religion, or culture they came from. It is for the woman who loves her roots and also knows she is here to grow beyond them. It is for the person who is beginning to wonder if maybe the life they once blamed was also shaping them for the path they came here to walk. And it is especially for the sacred rebel who is ready to stop proving and start remembering. When my dad called me a rebel, I felt how true it was. And I also felt how important it was to clarify what kind of rebel I am. I'm not just rebellious just to be difficult. Maybe when I was 16 I was. I'm not here to push against everything for the sake of pushing. I am a sacred rebel. And to me, sacred rebellion is not rejection. Sacred rebellion is devotion to truth. It is the willingness to question what we've been taught when those teachings keep us small, silent, disconnected, afraid of our bodies, afraid of our intuition, afraid of our own power. It is the courage to say, I can love where I came from, and I still choose differently. I can honor my family and my ancestors and still become fully myself. I can respect tradition and still follow the voice of spirit beyond the walls of what I was taught to believe. I can carry the strength of my lineage forward without carrying every limitation, belief, or wound that came with it. This is very important because I do come from good people, strong people, hardworking people, loving people. And I am a good person too. That matters. Because sometimes when we begin to grow spiritually or emotionally, there can be this sense that in order to become ourselves, we have to reject everything behind us. And for some people, distance is necessary. For a time, distance was necessary for me. Boundaries are necessary. Healing sometimes does require space. And also, I'm learning that the deeper work is not always about cutting ourselves off from where we come from. Sometimes the deeper work is learning to hold our roots with more tenderness while still allowing our lives to grow in a new direction. That feels really especially true for me. My dad's father was a free spirit, a bull rider, a man who didn't marry until his 30, which was, in his time, its own way of rebelling. My dad rebelled in his own way too. He left his family in the sandhills of Nebraska to create a better life for himself and his family. He worked hard. He provided. He cared. And he built a life with his two hands, with his own discipline and his own type of devotion. I deeply love and respect that. And I also see that my dad never really learned how to value listening to his body and honoring his rhythms. He worked hard his whole life. And now at 87, he's dealing with lack of mobility, constant pain, and frustration with the aging process. That really is tender for me to witness. He has taught me a lot of things, but because I inherited that work ethic too, I inherited the belief system that value comes from what we produce. I inherited the drive to keep going, to push harder, to prove myself, to make something meaningful with my life. And over time, one of my deepest rebellions has been learning that my worth does not come from what I produce. My worth comes from who I am. My worth remains when I rest. My worth remains when I need support. My worth remains when I am not performing, proving, pleasing, or producing. That is my form of sacred rebellion. To honor the hardworking people I come from and also stop worshiping exhaustion. The more I reflected on this, the more I could see how the sacred rebel has always been alive in me. At 16, I chopped off my gorgeous hair and I dyed it pink, then dark brown, then rocket fire red, just to see what it would be like. At 18, I chose not to get confirmed as a Catholic, even though that was against my parents' wishes because Catholicism felt way too narrow to fit my wide open heart. At 25, I listened to that same big heart and I opened my first yoga studio. I've never really been the black sheep of my family. I'm more like the tie-dyed purple sheep. Still part of the flock, still deeply connected, and also very much moving to the rhythm of my own soul. I teach yoga differently than most people. I don't just offer students modifications, I offer them freedom of expression, freedom to listen to their deep knowing. I invite them to listen to their own bodies, to trust their own inner wisdom, to stop forcing themselves into shapes that do not honor who they are. That might sound simple, but in a world where so many of us have been trained to override our bodies, that act of listening is radical. That, my friends, is sacred rebellion. I am also an energy healer in a world that still gives more authority to what can be measured, diagnosed, prescribed, or explained through systems we already recognize. My sister, she's a doctor, and people naturally understand and respect her work. I respect her work too, deeply. And I also know my work is skilled, it's sacred, it's needed. It is simply less understood. And then there's my music. I don't just sing at church like much of my family tradition might understand. I lead a spiritual kirtan band. I sing Sanskrit mantras. I offer my heart to gods and goddesses that many of the people in my family fear because they come from outside the Catholic tradition. And still, I come from good people. And I am a good person too. That matters. This is not about rejecting my roots. It's not about you rejecting yours. It's about honoring them by letting them evolve through me. Now, after writing about being a sacred rebel, I started looking through old family photos, and something else really opened up. I could see her, the little girl running down a sandy hill with her arms wide and her mouth open in pure delight. The one playing in the sprinklers, soaked and smiling with no concern for how she looked or how people saw her. The one riding horses, climbing ladders, playing ball, fishing with the boys, exploring wide open places, and doing her best to keep up with the older siblings and cousins who were always a few steps ahead. I was the one who was not easily contained. And I realized, before I knew the word Shakti, before I knew the word goddess, before I understood the sacred feminine, her life force was already moving through me. In my laughter, in my body, in the way I could feel things no one else could, in my courage, in my desire to belong, and my deeper need to be free. At the time, I didn't know any of that. I was just being me. And if you had told younger Mindy that this would become my path, that one day I would teach yoga, lead women's circles, sing Sanskrit mantras, write about the sacred feminine, and help women remember their Shakti within themselves, she probably would have laughed. She might have run barefoot through the grass before you could even have finished explaining it. And yet, looking back, I can see that the course was already unfolding. Something in me knew the path before my mind had language for it. Shakti is the living energy of creation. She is the life force that animates us. She moves through breath, body, emotion, instinct, creativity, courage, devotion, desire, and truth. She is not something we have to become. She is something we remember. And when I look back at those old photos, I don't see a girl who was missing her power. I see a girl who was full of it. I see the sacred feminine before I knew how to call her sacred. I see Shakti before I knew her name. A lot of us look back at how we were raised and focus mostly on what was hard, what was painful, what felt wrong. And yes, we all have things to overcome. All of us. That is part of being a human on this planet. Most of us carry wounds from our families, our lineage, our communities, our culture, our religions, and the expectations we were raised with and inherited. We carry the pain of not being seen clearly. We carry the sting of being teased, dismissed, judged, or misunderstood. We carry the exhaustion of trying to fit into boxes that were never shaped for the truth of who we are. And with a slightly different viewpoint, we can begin to see how these paths have helped us to remember how we came here to be. Maybe my soul came here to see the box clearly so I could remember I was never meant to live inside of it. That line landed deeply for me because for a long time, I blamed my siblings for not accepting me the way I wanted to be accepted and loved. I carried the ache of feeling unseen. I desperately wanted people to see me for who I was, not just for what I was willing to do or the risks I was willing to take or the ways I could get their attention without being seen as an attention seeker or a drama queen. I wanted to be known, really known, and that longing shaped me. It made me feel like I had something to prove. So I pushed myself. I became daring. I became adventurous. I became willing to try things that scared me. I became a perfectionist, and that helped me learn how to hold my own. I played sports. I pushed my body. I played rugby in college. I learned how to be tough, strong, fast, brave, and resilient. I fished when fishing seemed like something that only the guys did. I water skied when my mom would barely get in the water. I climbed rocks and mountains in Alaska and in Colorado. I left Nebraska and I've stayed away. I sat in the front row of every single class that I ever took. I chose to get married outside in a way that felt true to my spirit, rather than in a more traditional setting. I was often the one willing to do something different. I wore bell-bottoms in high school when that was not a cool thing. And yes, some of that came from wanting to be seen. Some of it came from feeling like I had to prove I was worthy. And beneath that, there was also something more sacred at work. There was a soul that knew I had not come here to be easily contained. I believe every soul comes here with a path, a set of lessons, a collection of relationships, a web of soul contracts, a field of experiences that shape, stretch, challenge, and awaken us. And when we arrive, we forget why we chose this family. We forget why we chose this body. We forget why we chose these gifts, these wounds, these longings, limitations, desires, people, and places. We forget there may be a deeper intelligence beneath the circumstances we resist. So we blame the path. We blame the people on the path. We blame ourselves. We think something went wrong. Something might be wrong with me. And maybe, from the soul's view, something was always going exactly right. Not because pain is the point, because remembering is the point. The pain was never meant to become our identity. The box was never meant to become our home. The misunderstanding was never meant to be the final truth. The path was here to help us wake up. Now, this does not mean we excuse harm. It does not mean we bypass grief. It does not mean we pretend everything was beautiful when it was not. It means we stop giving our power away to the story that our path was only something that happened to us. At some point, we get to start asking deeper questions. How did this path prepare me? What did it awaken within me? What did it teach me to choose? What part of me became stronger because of what I had to walk through? That's not denial. That is reclamation. My grandmother passed away when I was just 1. And for a long time, part of me carried that as abandonment, a deep, quiet belief that she left me just when I needed her the most. And yet, I have also felt her as a guardian angel throughout my entire life. And as I look back now, I wonder if she knew who I was and why I came. I think she did. Maybe she didn't actually abandon me. Maybe she chose to support me from beyond her body. Maybe she could do more for me from the other side than she could have done while trying to survive inside her own box. That thought really brings tears to my eyes and to my heart. What a sacrifice she made. What a deep love. What a mystery. We don't always understand the soul agreements we made before we arrived here. We don't always understand why certain people stay, why certain people leave, why other certain doors close, or why certain longings remain. And sometimes, years later, we begin to see that we were never as alone as we thought. Something was always guiding us, supporting us. Someone was always watching over us. The life force kept moving. Shakti kept rising. Before I had spiritual language, I had my body. My body knew how to run, climb, play, push, fall, get back up, and try again. My body knew the joy of movement before I knew the word embodiment. My body knew courage before I knew the word dharma. My body knew aliveness before I knew the word Shakti. And this is why I believe embodiment matters so much. The body is not just something we drag around while the mind and spirit try to become enlightened. The body is a keeper of sacred wisdom. The body carries memories. The body tells the truth. The body knows when we are shrinking, when we are performing, when we are proving, pleasing, hiding, forcing, or abandoning ourselves. And the body also knows when we feel fully alive, when we are aligned, when we are free. When I played sports, I was learning power. When I played rugby, I was learning grit. When I climbed rock faces and mountains, I was learning to trust myself and the earth. When I fished, I was learning that I didn't have to stay inside someone else's idea of what girls were supposed to do. When I moved away from Nebraska, I was learning that love for my roots does not mean I had to stay planted in the same soil. That line feels really especially important because leaving did not mean I stopped loving where I came from. It meant my soul needed different soil to grow into the fullness of who I came here to be. All of it was teaching me. All of it was preparing me. All of it was helping me claim the power I would one day use to help women reclaim their own power in themselves. There is a point in the healing journey when blame no longer gives us what we need. It may be necessary for a little while. Anger can help us tell the truth. Grief helps us to feel what was never fully felt. Blame can help us recognize that something hurt. And eventually, if we want to be free, we have to gather our energy back from the story that someone else holds the key to our becoming. It's just not true. My siblings, who I blamed, they did their best. My family did their best. The world we grew up in had strong structures and narrow ideas about what was acceptable, what was lovable, successful, spiritual, feminine, masculine, and true. We were all shaped by those structures. And my soul came here to feel those structures, to see those structures, and eventually climb out of them. Yours probably did too. And we're still climbing. I'm still exploring what it feels like without so many inherited limitations. I am still learning how to be seen without the need to perform. I am still learning how to be powerful without having to prove anything. I am still learning how to be free without needing everyone to understand my freedom. That too is part of the path. And this is where sacred rebellion becomes softer and stronger at the same time, because the sacred rebel does not need everyone to agree. She does not need everyone to understand. She does not need to prove her worth through performance. She simply keeps listening. She keeps choosing truth. She keeps remembering. Maybe you're not rebellious. Maybe you're remembering. Maybe this is true for you too. Maybe your sacred power is not something you lost. Maybe it's something you learned to hide. Maybe your Shakti has been moving through you all along, in your loving, in your longing, in your sensitivity, your anger, your creativity, your courage, your desire, your grief, your joy, your refusal to live a life that does not fit your soul. Maybe you are not starting from scratch. Maybe you are remembering her. And maybe your rebellion is not a rejection of where you came from. Maybe it is the soul saying, I love my roots and I am allowed to grow. I honor my family and I am allowed to be myself. I respect where I began and I am absolutely allowed to follow the wider path calling me forward. Maybe the feminine rising looks rebellious because we have been trained to fear her power. When a woman trusts her body, it can look really rebellious. When she honors her intuition, it can look rebellious. When she rests before she collapses, that can be so rebellious. When she says no without apologizing for having a boundary, that can look rebellious. When she stops asking permission to be whole, it can be rebellious. But maybe it isn't rebellion at all. Maybe it's simply remembrance. Maybe it's the soul returning to itself. Maybe it is the feminine rising from beneath centuries, millennia of conditioning and saying, I am still here. Yes, because we are. If this speaks to something in you, I want to invite you to listen. Not to me first, to yourself, to your body, to the quiet knowing underneath the noise, to the younger version of you who may still be waiting to be seen, loved, honored, and invited back into your life. Listen to the life force that has been moving through you since the beginning. This is the work of Shakti Rising Circle. Shakti Rising Circle is an ongoing weekly gathering for women who are ready to live rooted, rise as they are, and remember the sacred feminine wisdom already alive within them. We gather to reclaim the body, intuition, voice, energy, softness, strength, delight, and power that were never truly gone. We gather to live rooted and rise as we are. We begin officially on Thursday, June 4th, and this is not a one-time program with a hard beginning and end. It is an ongoing journey. You can join when the timing is right and continue walking with us as your own remembering unfolds. We meet live on Thursdays from 5 till 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I'll put the link below this video. Come as you are. Bring the girl who is never easy to contain. Bring the woman who is ready to stop proving and start remembering. Bring the sacred rebel, the tender heart, the old ache, the inner fire, and the life force that has been with you all along. Live rooted, rise as you. Thank you for being here with me. If this video stirred something in you, I'd love for you to comment with the word remembering or sacred rebel. And if you know a woman who is walking this path, maybe someone who's learning to trust her body, reclaim her voice, or remember who she came here to be, please share this with her. Not because she needs fixing, because she deserves support. I'll see you soon. With all my love, Mindy.